Hello, and welcome to the NFL Draft Special of Minor League Maniacs. Tonight we're gonna have a format where we each it's not a mock draft because anyone can do a mock draft. Our draft is gonna be us playing the GMs of each team and how we would make selections based off of uh, evaluations of the players and team needs. So I guess that's really all the intro we need. We can just get right into it. I wish we had like some cool music, like do 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 do. Can anyone fake that one? No one. Okay. Um, I guess I'll go first since I'm the one already talking. Yeah, there we go. All right, that was lame. Don't do that again.
I'm
Uh,
working with what I got here, man. Come on.
I should have downloaded something before. Okay, so with the first pick in the draft, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select, based on my advice, would be Jameis Winston, quarterback, FSU. So I picked Jameis Winston because he worked in a pro-style offense, and I have a theory that pro-style quarterbacks adjust much better to the NFL than spread-type quarterbacks like Mr. Mariota. And I think most of the offseason problems are minor and are typical for a college kid. The assault allegation is the only thing that is of concern, but there's no way that I can know how it will be resolved. So that's going to be more of a team thing. So without any of my knowledge, personally, I can't hire PIs to go follow Winston around. So I don't know what happened. But I have to go based off of other things, and the major point is he has the potential talent is too great for you to pass up because you'll be if that's a draft pick you'll be regretting for the rest of your life. So Jameis Winston's mine. Who wants to go next?
Sure. Even though Ryan agrees with you and I don't. So with my first pick for Tampa Bay, I'm going Marcus Mariota. I agree for the most part with Josh's assessment that the spread quarterbacks in general aren't as successful because they have a harder time transitioning to the NFL. I think that's mostly because they rely on their legs too much, and I think Marcus Mariota actually relies. He can use his legs, absolutely, but I think he actually can perform with his arm well enough that he might take half the season that Jameis Winston might look better for the first half of the year, but I think in the overall careers, I think, and I agree with Josh, the spread quarterback's not as good, but I give it to Marcus Mariota here. The only other thing I would say real quick is that Winston threw, what was it, 4 more interceptions in one season than Marcus Mariota threw his entire career. That's just something that jumps out at me as well, along with the off-the-field issues. So Tampa Bay needs a quarterback. Give me Mariota.
Well, that's cool, but you're wrong. So, Josh, you couldn't be more right. I mean, Tampa needs a quarterback, and with a number 1 pick, you're not trading it down. You can't get rid of it. You have to keep it as an owner or as a GM. You know what I mean? So, with it, you got to take Winston. Why? He's already in Florida. You got that fan base right there. That's a bonus right there. You already got people from Florida State. They're going to be like, fuck yeah, I'm a Tampa fan now. Fuck Jacksonville. Fuck Miami. Fuck any other team. I'm going to Tampa. Another thing is he's, I think, more in a better spot than, say, RG3 was when he came out. I think, though he's not mature off the field, on the field he's shown a lot. I think he's got all the right things, and he has too much potential, as Josh said, to pass up. Mariota scares me. You don't see many quarterbacks that use this spread offense like he does work out. Or if they do work out, they're a flame. It's a 2-year fix that you designed your whole offense over, and then they're done after that. So I just don't think you can get rid of that pick by taking Mariota. I think you got to take number 1, Jameis Winston.
2 against 1, Hardy. That means you lose. No, just kidding. I don't think anyone agrees for the rest of the time. So
I don't
that
think
was
so. Also, I figure we don't have enough time to argue about the picks really, so I'm not going to say.
I mean, we can in the
else,
first. We can in like the first 5 or something. I mean, I don't think it's that bad. I was just going to say that the thing that scares me about Mariota compared to Winston is that Winston did have his own play calling, uh, where basically all Mariota did was look over the sideline and he'd see a picture of a pig and go, "Okay, pig," and then that's what they'd run. Where there's a lot less of that in Winston's offense, so that's something where it's going to be easier for Winston to adjust than Mariota. Personally, I don't think either one is going to be more than a average to maybe slightly above average quarterback, but you know.
Well, yeah, you'll see what I think about Winston when you see my next couple picks. Hint, hint.
Yeah. All right. So without further ado, we'll go to the next pick. Tennessee Titans are drafting at number 2 overall. So it is a quarterback-driven league. So with Winston off the board and with really no other quarterback competition, I'm taking Mariota. I'm not entirely sure on how good Mariota is going to be as an NFL quarterback, but it's just one of those necessary evils where you have to take the risk because you need a quarterback, and the Titans can't do anything with Mettenberger, in my opinion. So, Mariota, I don't think he's going to transition well into the NFL. Out of the last 10 spread quarterbacks, only Cam Newton can be considered successful. Other QBs included like E.J. Manuel. So if that puts it into perspective, Mariota will most likely be eaten up with no talent around him. But I think he'll be better than Mettenberger, who has no chance of ever being a franchise quarterback. So you're basically just wading in the water if you draft anyone else. Where at least if you draft Mariota and he ends up being good, you're better than you are. And if he ends up being bad, you're where you are now anyway. I don't think any other draft pick is going to help Mettenberger enough where they actually make the playoffs. I think he at least has a chance in like I said before, in a QB-driven league. You can't take the chance that you're wrong, and he ends up being great. So I feel like I'd be forced to take him.
All right. Well, I can sort of. So we're on a little bit of parallel here because I'm sitting here and there's a quarterback on the board for me, Jameis Winston. But just like you were saying, I don't trust Jameis Winston because of the off-the-field issues, the interceptions. I just don't trust him in general going into this draft. And if you're going to make a top 2 pick as that quarterback, you got to nail it. So while I feel like the Marcus Mariota pick was good for the first one, I'm going for Tennessee Titans, the big boy D lineman Leonard Williams. He's by far the best player in this draft. Remember the last time there was a player that was not a quarterback, not a running back, well, maybe it's not the last time, but I can specifically remember there was a time where Jamarcus Russell was picked ahead of Calvin Johnson when everybody said Calvin Johnson was the best player in the draft. Same exact sort of situation. You got to take the quarterback. You got to take your franchise guy for the future. I'm sorry, I don't see as much in Jameis Winston enough to convince me to take him over Leonard Williams in this spot, especially because now I don't believe in Mettenberger as a future like a franchise solution. He's still worth a look. I think that if you build your team, if Tennessee sits in this draft, they get they nail this pick, they nail their second round pick, they can have some serious young foundation for the future. They may not get anywhere next year, but they might be in a spot to get another guy next year. I don't know the quarterbacks that are coming out next year already, but I still feel like you got to take the best player on the board here. I think that's Leonard Williams over Jameis Winston, and just give Mettenberger 1 year to see what he's got. Maybe he's got nothing. He's probably got nothing, but it's worth a look.
I'm going to actually, since I'm on the clock, I'm going to say go with the DT. And the reason I go, you think of what Tennessee used to be. Tennessee always had this stellar defense and these, okay quarterbacks, but a great runner. All right, and I think they're trying to get, they got rid of Fisher a while ago, but I think a lot of teams are trying to get back to their roots when they won, and that's when Tennessee won. And I think if you're ever going to build a team around defense, you got to start at the D tackle. You saw Detroit did it when they drafted Fairley, and then when they drafted Sue. Now that they're gone, but that's what they started with. A couple years ago, you saw the Jets do it with Williams. It's where you start. And when you have a guy, like Sean said, that's so much of a stud, can hold up the line basically by himself, and maybe one of the best to come in the league, you know, you don't want to say a no doubt sure shot because I mean you see fucking bust all the time, but I think this is the guy to do it. This is the guy to start around, and this is the guy that can really start to transform their defense, which I think transforms their whole team.
Well, I'm outvoted on that one, so it is how it is. We'll move on to the next pick. Jacksonville Jaguars have the third pick in the draft. So I'm going with Leonard Williams now. I agree with the mindset that you have to go after the quarterbacks, even though Leonard Williams is, like Hardy said, the best player in the draft, and I don't think anyone even disputes that, honestly. The Jaguars may not necessarily need a defensive tackle because their line's pretty stout, but they need Williams. Anyone would be stupid not to take Williams if the two quarterbacks are already off the board. He's a 300-pound defensive tackle that can not only run block but can blitz and can fit into a 3-tech, 3-4, even a 5-tech system. He's too good to pass up when he falls into your lap like he's going to with the Jags, and so that's why I'm taking him.
Yeah, I mean, if he's on the board for you there at 3 for Jacksonville, I would totally agree with the pick, obviously, but he's not on my board. So for me, now that we've got Jacksonville, we've got our quarterback from the future, for the future, not from the future, in Blake Bortles. We got to get this guy some weapons. How the hell are we going to know? We don't want him to be another one of these quarterbacks who actually could be talented. They have nothing in Jacksonville right now. Who's he throwing to? Who's he handing off to? I actually almost went with Todd Gurley with this pick, even though that's an extremely far reach in my mind due to the injury concerns, but they need to give this guy some kind of help. And so since Todd Gurley's a little bit of a reach here, instead I went with the number 1 wide receiver on my board, Amari Cooper. Give the guy somebody to throw to, see if Blake Bortles really is worth the investment you gave on him last year. Now, I don't really have much to say about the difference between Cooper and White, the consensus top 2 receivers. I'm just going with Cooper because that's generally who's ranked higher. I think they're both going to be really good players, so I'd go with Cooper.
Well, if I'm Jacksonville, which I am, you got Gus Bradley now at the helm, and I think you got to take Fowler at this spot. I think you can judge this, you can debate this, but Fowler I think is the best defensive outside linebacker on the board. He's so versatile. He can play up, he can play back. His coverage is even really good in his sample size of college, which that doesn't always transfer into the NFL. But what you've seen out of this guy, he's a complete stud. I think that they'll use him in Jacksonville a lot more. He's also got that Florida fan base, which is always great when you can take a college player and then put him in the NFL close to home for the most part, because you carry over fans, you carry over family, which is always good. You got that hometown feel. So that's why I would go with him and Fowler at number 3.
Yeah, I can't really argue any of that, so it's hard in the top 5 because it's basically based on opinion. So we'll just move on to Oakland. With the 4th pick, most mock drafts have them going with a wide receiver here, and I think just based on their history, they're going to choose a wide receiver. But, like I said before, it's not based on mock drafts, it's based on the GM. And I think I'm smarter than the front office in Oakland. So what I would do instead of taking a wide receiver is I would take Ryan's guy, Dante Fowler. I mean, I can't really say much more than what he said because he is a stud. But the Raiders had the 2nd fewest sacks last year in the entire NFL. So obviously, defensive pass rush is a huge problem for them. And in this league where you have to get to the rusher, basically the defensive end is like the 3rd most important after quarterback and cornerback. So that's why I take him in this spot. He may not be as explosive as another defensive end like Vic Beasley, but he's an all-around player that you can build around your defense around for the future. And he can get to the quarterback consistently when you do put him on the line. And he has the highest upside of any every down player defensively in this draft, I think. Most mocks may have them choosing Cooper or White, but I'm of the mindset that if you have an elite pass rusher and a balanced defense, it's more important than elite wide receiver.
So I think that Oakland is going to take a receiver, and I have them taking a receiver. So I think I took Cooper off the board last pick for Jacksonville. That leaves me with Kevin White. I think Oakland's very happy to end up with Kevin White. My theory, I agree with John. I mean, again, in the top 5 picks, what are you going to say? I think that going defensive end is probably a good idea for Oakland. But on the same page, just the same thing I said about Blake Bortles, Derek Carr has nobody to throw to in Oakland. With James Jones, the cast-off from Green Bay, I mean, you got to get the guy. You got to get him a receiver to play with, or else you're never going to know if he's actually your franchise guy or not. So I want to bring in Kevin White and see what Derek Carr can put together with him to give me a solid assessment of Derek Carr's my guy for the future. So I'm going Kevin White.
Like you said, it's Oakland, and Oakland's always going to take receivers because it's Oakland. And I'm taking Cooper in this pick. Why? Because, it gives them another weapon. Carr needs something. And people love to shit on Oakland, but Oakland's always one of those teams where if you give them 1 to 2 other players at a set position, that team is good. All right, and I feel like they're always on the cusp. And I think adding Jones is great, but if you add Cooper to this offense, you're starting to, add to this pot where you're getting something cooking. And when they're so young, I think this is just a huge, healthy, great meal coming for Oakland fans. When they move to a new stadium, you're going to see a new record, and you're going to see them back in the playoffs.
Going with bold predictions along with the draft, I see.
All right, we can move on to the next. The Washington Redskins will be drafting 5th overall. And so basically how I did mine is they need a lot of help on defense, but they did make some free agent moves. I think they traded for Deshaun Goldson and signed Jaron Johnson. They signed Chris Culver, cornerback, and they signed Terrence Knighton at defensive tackle and a couple of defensive ends. So clearly they also know they sucked at defense last year since they're making so many moves on the defensive side. But even though it isn't necessarily the biggest need, I just think that when Vic Beasley falls into your lap and your defense was as bad as it was last year for the Redskins, you have to make the pick. I think Jason Hatcher was very good. He was a lone bright spot on the Redskins last year. So having Beasley, another elite pass rusher on that other side, could create a tandem that could make the secondary better than what they really are. When you're putting that much pressure on the quarterback, he's a little bit undersized, but he can still pass rush even when he's standing up at the outside linebacker spot. And he can make up for whoever does start at the defensive end position this year if they decide to start him at outside linebacker. He is a huge risk in the run. That's his biggest red flag. So he will be a situational backer, which isn't exactly what you want to hear. But the run game is so small in comparison to the passing game in the NFL that I think you're going to see this as a kind of a new phase where a situational pass rusher isn't a bad thing to be taken so early. And it honestly wouldn't surprise me if he tallied 10 sacks this year as a rookie. And I think that's what makes it worth the 5th overall selection.
Now, I totally disagree that the NFL is more passing than rushing. I think if you're not paying attention to nuances, and I'm not trying to insult you, Josh, by saying this, I think that actually the run game, even for a passing team, is extremely important. But that's for another day, because actually I agree with that pick. I have Vic Beasley going to the Washington Redskins here, which as a Giants fan scares the shit out of me. And I'll let you notice that I still have Dante Fowler on the board, and I pass up Dante Fowler for Vic Beasley because I'll just admit, as a Giants fan, I've watched a bunch of tape on these pass rushers trying to figure out which one, if any, even fell to us, which one would I want. And Vic Beasley is a fucking monster. I mean, if you watch this guy rush the passer, he reminds me of a little linebacker number 56 that played for the Giants and won us a couple Super Bowls in the 80s. So that's what it reminds me of. And this guy just scares the shit out of me. The fact that he made it to 5 on my board is actually kind of surprising because I really like Vic Beasley. I think he will have an awesome career as long as he plays for. Also, I agree that he may not be the best run run attacker. I don't know what you want to say, but run defender. But I mean, the pass rush ability is just insane. You can't pass that up. So go ahead, Ryan.
I'm sitting here, boom, trade down, trade to the New York Jets. Also with that pick, RG3 to the New York Jets. Now the Jets are on the board. They go down a little one-pick swing. That's fine. All right, who do the Jets take? Boom! Vic! Jets take him! Jets love pass rushing. They love defense. They got RG3. They got a quarterback. Boom, solved.
So you're moving up a pick, and your price for that is taking RG3 off their hands.
Yeah, they don't want him. They don't want him.
Yeah, but now they don't have a quarterback.
Oh, you wait till my next pick.
All right. So after that, I guess we'll just go to the next pick. Now the Jets are on the clock at the 6th overall pick, Ryan's Jets. So basically, the Jets need a quarterback, and they traded for Ryan Fitzpatrick. They needed cornerbacks, and they got Darrelle Revis and Antonio Cromartie. They got a running back, and they got a couple guards. So even with the addition to Brandon Marshall, I think that what I would do at this point with Kevin White sitting in front of you is I would draft Kevin White. It's kind of a personal pick for me because, I mean, I think it is for most people whether you want to draft Cooper or White. I don't think you're going to go wrong either way. I think both are going to be very good players in the NFL. They have similar ceilings with Cooper edging White out a little bit, but I think White's floor is much higher than Cooper's, so I guess I just like going with the safe pick. It's just kind of a personal preference of mine. I think, I just don't see White ever being a bust. Cooper probably won't be a bust either, but I don't know, I just like being kind of safe. With the trade for Fitzpatrick, who's a serviceable quarterback, with Ridley in the backfield, Harvin working the slot, and Marshall the number one, I mean, White is going to be completely lost in that secondary if you have him as your number two. And the pressure isn't going to be on him to make the plays either. He has a steep learning curve based on the system I think he played in West Virginia. So the ability to be like the third guy Fitzpatrick looks at is appealing. And, I mean, even Fitzpatrick, as bad as he is, can hit a guy that's as big as LeBron James. So I think it's a good pick.
All right, well, for my pick for the Jets at number 6, you may remember that I still have everyone else's number 1 overall pick, Jameis Winston, quarterback, available. And I think the Jets are a quarterback away from actually being a contender because their defense is pretty solid. So at this point, I mean, if Jameis Winston just falls, they didn't even have to trade up, and they can get Jameis Winston at 6 because I think that only happens because – or not – I don't think it's going to happen. The only reason he has slid at this point is because I feel that none of the teams in front of them, other than Tampa, desperately need the quarterback. Tennessee maybe, but I already discussed why I didn't pick him there. So Jameis Winston falls to the Jets, and you have to take him at 6. So.
Well, now with Washington on the board, they also got the Jets' third round pick. So I mean, that's how they got RG3 in that package deal. To let you know. So now you got Washington on the board. They don't have a quarterback. Who's on the board? Mariota. Marcus Mariota. Why? Because Washington are a bunch of idiots. Why wouldn't they buy into this? All right? They probably feed his whole system, change the whole system. Mariota's back on the board. Marcus Mariota, Washington Redskins. Done.
So we have the first big trade of the night and the first big surprise of the night. Marcus Mariota going to the Redskins at number 6 overall. So next on the clock, I believe, is Chicago with the 7th overall pick. And this one was tough for me. I could see them going wide receiver because it's hard to pass up Amari Cooper. But their nose tackle situation, I think, is kind of underplayed. They lost Stephen Paea in the offseason. And they really don't have a true nose tackle. I think they have a couple of young guys, but there's a lot of unknowns with them. And with Danny Shelton right there, and where you need a defensive tackle, I think I'd take him in that spot. You already have Alshon Jeffrey and Eddie Royal, so you really don't need another wide receiver. Uh, I think he has the ability to collapse the pocket on just about any offensive line. His was it pro days in Alabama was ridiculous, and everyone was talking about how he was dominating offensive lineman after offensive lineman on the one-on-one drills. No one could stop him. On a D running the 3 feet on the 3-4, which I believe the Bears ran a lot last year, he can play a two-gap technique and use his strong lower half body strength to his advantage. And I can see an early Sue type year out of Shelton early on in his career, and I think that's just too great of a player to pass up at that pick.
So actually, I really like Danny Shelton too. I have him sliding a little bit further, but another player, kind of like my last pick with the Jets, Jameis Winston fell to the Jets at 6, which is kind of a surprise according to most what people think is going to happen. And again, this isn't predictions, but I have Dante Fowler still sitting on the board, and I think the Chicago has so many needs defensively, especially. I mean, you got to take Dante Fowler here. You can't pass him up at this point. At 7, it's a steal, so I go Fowler.
I think with the loss of Marshall, I think you have a lot more holes you need to fill. Like Josh said, you have Roy, you have Jeffrey, I mean, you have targets, but Cutler's not going to hit him, so why not give him one more? So Kevin White. I mean, you got to give him another guy so he can complain about his diabetes. So Cutler, good luck with 3.
Cutler will have a third guy that he can't hit. That's good. Okay, with the 8th overall pick, I believe it's Atlanta. The Falcons are on the clock. The Hawks have needed a pass rusher since basically the beginning of their franchise, is what it feels like. That defense has been horrible for a while now. Last year, I think they missed out on Khalil Mack by like 1 pick, which you kind of feel bad for them for. But this year they'll get to pick between 2 potentially elite pass rushers in Shane Ray and Alvin Bud Dupree. 99.9% of the time I go with the conservative, safer option of Dupree. However, Ray's ceiling is insane. And if you hit that pick, it could be a ridiculous steal for them, and they need that. They signed Adrian Claiborne this offseason. So if you give Ray a year to mostly get just one-on-one coverage with most of the attention being sent over to Claiborne, where he can develop the rest of his game that is lacking at this point, I think it would be beneficial to him, and it could offset some of that, some of the stuff that he's not as good at, and make him more of a conservative pick in the end. Then there's the off-field issues that are just recently getting brought up, but that's more of just being an idiot, which I don't really mind from your outside linebacker / defensive end who's just good at pass rushing. You can be an idiot, just get to the quarterback. So, yeah.
All right, so we agree on the need for Atlanta. I agree that sucks they missed out on Khalil Mack. I was high on Khalil Mack, like I'm high on Vic Beasley this year, I might add. Yeah, in this case, I'm going with the safe pick, Bud Dupree. I agree, same need, same spot, same position. I like Dupree because he's safer than Ray, not just for off the field and just for overall talent. I think he's safer, but also the Shane Ray thing no one talks about is the toe injury, that he might actually require surgery. So with my first pick, I just don't really want to mess with any of that, especially considering Bud Dupree looks like he could be a pretty talented guy too, so I'm going with Dupree.
I'm not going to even spend a lot of time on this because I'm just going to piggyback on what Josh said. So that's it. Take Ray.
So if anyone doesn't remember, it's Shane Ray. Yeah. 9th pick overall is Hardy's New York Giants. I actually wrote a lot for this one, which kind of makes me scared now because now there's more things for Hardy to pick out of it. So here I go. So again, Cooper is just sitting there on the board, just waiting for someone to pick him up. But Eli doesn't need him because he has OBJ. So I have to pass on him as the new Giants GM. I think the offensive line is just so much more important than a wide receiver to me, and Eli Manning really needs the help from his O-line just as much as he doesn't need any more help with from a wide receiver with the emergence of Odell. I think Pugh, is that how you say his name?
Yeah, Justin Pugh.
Yeah, Pugh. Well, I think he was slightly overmatched last year at right tackle. I think people kind of figured him out towards the end of the year. And as the Giants GM, I'd want to slide him back inside where he was the most comfortable in college at guard. And Sheriff is an option, but he is a guard in the NFL, I think, more than the tackle. So I'd rather have the best tackle in the draft in Eric Flowers. And with Pugh being as good or better than Sheriff at guard, then having Flowers at tackle and Pugh at guard could really help that solidify an entire side of that offensive line for the Giants. And that solidification would mean more time for Eli to make less errant throws and throw less interceptions. Which, as we know, you keep Eli his interceptions down, and he has all-star type numbers in the end, or years.
I can't believe you would say that. I'm flattered. But so I like the Eric Flowers pick, Josh. I think I wouldn't be too upset if that's who we end up with. The reason that I go not Flowers is because I think that at offensive tackle, I think the only reason he's really flying up draft boards recently is because he's the lineman who projects the best at tackle. In the long term. And I think that's why he's going up boards, because all the other good linemen in this draft are mostly guard-type players. And that's the reason why I actually go with Brandon Scherff for my Giants. Pugh, he was not the problem last year. Pugh was not necessarily – he wasn't great, but he looked good. He's young. He looks like he can get better. I don't know if I don't think he'll ever become a left tackle in this league. I think he's either a guard or a right tackle at best. But if I go with Scherff, I get the best run blocker in the draft. This is another guy. I told you I watched a bunch of tape on guys Giants might take. Scherff is a monster in the run blocking game. Every single play, he puts his guy on the ground. He doesn't even just block him, but his guy is on his ass, and I really like that about my offensive line. So I'm going to go Scherff because I want a guy on my offensive line who's going to whoop your ass and make you scared no matter what position you're coming from, because if he comes around the corner and you're not paying attention, it's going to hurt. I think Pugh can hold that right tackle spot, and I think Scherff upgrades our offensive line incredibly. And hey, even maybe we put Scherff at right tackle and we put Pugh inside. Either way, I think that's a really good situation. So I got to go Scherff.
I'm with Hardy on this. This is one of the actual ones I really looked into, surprisingly, because I think the Jets really needed an offensive line, but there's no way they'll take them. But Scherff, it's just like Hardy said, there's no guy that's going to contest him with running. And to solidify that, the Giants need a running game, and the Giants need protection for Eli to win. If they don't have this, then they're the Giants you saw last year and don't want to see. All right, so I think this is just the only pick they can go with because this guy is just a beast for the run. He's a beast for Eli and to help that whole line kind of solidify that line. I don't think that you need a tackle because I think, like Sean said, the other guy is fine. Yeah, he might not be great, but he's good enough. And to get that and have solidify a run game and give something for Eli to look forward to besides sitting on his ass or throwing a pick, that's just only benefits for the Giants.
And I'll just make one quick last comment about. I meant to say it when I was going about the tackle versus guard need. So Justin Pugh, like I said, was actually not really the issue. The problem was that our top two starting guards were hurt, and we already only had one guard that was worth starting anyway. So it was really the interior of our line that broke down last year. Both on the ends, Justin Pugh at right tackle and Will Beatty at left tackle were not great, but they weren't the issue last year. That's all I wanted to say.
All right, next pick. The St. Louis Rams are picking to finish off the top 10. So this offseason they traded for Nick Foles. So they infinitely got better considering how horrible Sam Bradford was. I think the next thing they need now that they actually have a quarterback is a center. I think they desperately need to upgrade their offensive line. I mean, not just a center. They think they probably need a right tackle and a guard as well. So really you can't go wrong if you can just actually take an offensive lineman here. But with Cameron Irving still on the board, center/offensive tackle, I think that I would take him Who better to draft than Irving with your offensive line like that? I mean, he can play basically any position on the offensive line. He's very versatile at it, and he's great at it. He'd be their starting center probably from day one, and his versatility would allow them to make other moves in free agency and in the draft, not just this year, but also in the future if they want to move him around, if they find other players that may be better. It's really a perfect pick for the Rams and their absolutely horrendous offensive line.
So I agree with pretty much everything you said, except I think we're flip flopping our the way we're going about this. So I think on this pick, actually, because they need so many different spots, I think that La'el Collins, offensive lineman, still on the board. I think he projects better at tackle than Irving. I think Irving is going to be a center for his career. I think that's just how it is. I think he's going to play the best there. That's where he's going to be. They might move him at guard a little bit if they need him, but I don't think he'll end up at tackle. And I think with the 10th pick, I don't think you can take a center. I love offensive line, but I need a guy who can at least play. I agree that so anywhere on the offensive line, okay, you can't be upset with the Cameron Irving pick. But I think La'el Collins is even more versatile because he can solidly play guard and might project at tackle, where I feel Irving is more pure inside guy. But that's, so I go Collins.
You got to stick with the offensive line, but I'm gonna go with Flowers here because I was thinking Bud Dupree, but what do Buds do? They turn into Flowers, and what do Flowers do? They fucking shine, and I think Flowers is there. He is gonna solidify that line. It's called one-man army, one-man line. This guy can do it. This guy is the answer. Nick Foles will be Nick Genius Foles by the end of the year just because of his linemen. So that's where I go. Flowers right there, baby.
All right. Minnesota Vikings are up next with the 11th pick in the draft. Let's see. I've been taking Brandon Scherff here. He has question marks surrounding him as a tackle in the NFL, just because he's so stout at guard. There are some questions of whether he can transition his game to be a tackle in the NFL, but most scouts are positive that he can be at least an elite guard. It's a bit early to take a guard for me, but the Vikings need two of them, so Scherff will be my ideal pick here. As already mentioned, La'el Collins is also an option, but Scherff is the more sure thing to me. To me, he feels kind of like a Logan Mankins type guard, where he's great at the point of attack and has a nasty demeanor to him, like in a good way. He's going to protect your quarterback. He's going to stick up for your teammates. And I think that was huge when the Patriots had Mankins to do that. Even if it's just the occasional shouting and jousting match with the opposition, you just can't not love that. It's a great additional quality to someone's game. So, yep, I'm taking Scherff.
All right, so I'm sitting here in the Minnesota Vikings. I play in a division that houses Aaron Rodgers. I play in a division that houses Matthew Stafford. I play in a division who houses Jay Cutler, who's not quite as scary anymore. But fact of the matter is we need some pass defense, and we got the best corner in the draft, Trey Waynes, sitting there, so I'm going Trey Waynes.
I'm going you don't got a quarterback really, but what you do need is a receiver. So I'm going to go Devontae Parker here. I think they need a number 2 receiver. I think he can fill that hole, and no matter what they do, they're not going to stack up in this division.
Probably true. Next pick on the draft, in number 12 overall, is the Cleveland Browns. So I finally have Amari Cooper getting picked at 12th overall. He falls to 12. That would be pretty crazy, but that's just how I have it going. So he falls out of the top 10, but still goes top 15, so people aren't freaking out too bad. Yeah, I can see like Mel Kiper's hair lighting on fire once he falls out of the top 10. But in my opinion, the Browns need a quarterback more than anything. However, you're not reaching for Hundley this early. And you're not mortgaging your future to trade up for Mariota. I don't think that's in their best interest. So Josh Gordon is never going to see an NFL field again. And though the additions of Hartline and Bo to the wide receiver group are nice, that's not going to get the job done, especially when Bo didn't even catch a touchdown last year. and Hartline showed how bad he can be when there's a good quarterback throwing to him. When the competition for your starting quarterback is between Johnny Manziel, Josh McCown, and Thad Lewis, you probably want some sort of help there. So Amari Cooper is going to have to deal with some frustrating moments with that quarterback core, but his elite natural ability will allow him to get plenty of balls thrown his way. He'll just have to use his physicality to go after the poorly thrown balls on most occasions throughout the year.
All right. Well, Josh, I would say if Amari Cooper was left, I'll give you that. I would have Amari Cooper going here if he was still around. I thought about going Devontae Parker here. That's the third wide receiver on my board. I thought about it for the same reasons Josh said. I pretty much agree. They desperately need offensive help. But I know the quarterback situation is so bad that you just really there's not much you can do there. But that being said, I still have the defensive tackle Danny Shelton sitting on the board. I agreed with Josh. I'm pretty high on him as well. At this point, Cleveland looks to be – I like how they're drafting this year. I don't like the Manziel pick last year. Don't get me wrong. But I like I think they're going to go – you got to go into the sense of this draft with picking the best player available for Cleveland right now because they're not going to get a chance at a quarterback. And on my board, they don't have a chance at one of the top two receivers. So at this point, the best player on my board is Danny Shelton, and you got to grab him because there's nothing left for you to do.
I mean, like you guys touched on, we as the Browns, we have no offense. We lost Cameron. Gordon's not going to see the field. We don't have shit. So why not? Well, I'm not going to invest a pick that can just sit there on the bench while fucking Manziel's doing a line of coke. I'm going to go to defense. I still have Bud Dupree on my board. I think he's something when you got Kruger, you got Joe Hayden there as a cornerback. You got a defense that's pretty solid. I think Bud Dupree can help that linebacking core real well.
All right. Can't really argue with any of those picks still. So with the 13th overall pick, the New Orleans Saints get their first pick of the night. They will also have the 31st pick that they traded that they got from Seattle, I believe, in the Jimmy Graham trade. Yeah. So basically Hardy said a lot of it already. So once again, we're just kind of swapping our picks around. I have the Saints going Trey Waynes here. They had a pretty horrible defense last year. I mean, it was a little bit better, but still not great. They have lots of holes, and I don't think they have a bigger hole than at cornerback. Their offseason moves did include bolstering their secondary with Brandon Browner and Kyle Wilson, but with Trey Waynes sitting in their lap, a future number one quarterback, which he's basically almost guaranteed to be. I mean, I think you have to make that move in a heartbeat. Though undersized, Waynes is a rock solid in coverage. He can diagnose and make the play in the run like no other quarterback in this draft, which puts him above the rest. That type of natural ability and football smarts will make him a lockdown number one cornerback. There's really no doubt in my mind that he will have to compete with Kyle Wilson for the number two cornerback spot in his rookie season, but he's up for the challenge, and he will most likely be the number one cornerback for the Saints D in just his sophomore campaign. So, you have to go with Trey Waynes here.
All right. Well, so I'm sitting here as New Orleans, and I think at this point, this range in the draft, we are all having this kind of scenario where there's a player that fell to us that we wouldn't have thought would have fallen to us. So I'm New Orleans, I'm sitting here, and Shane Ray, one of the top pass rushers, is still sitting here. As we said, their defense was pretty bad. You got Drew Brees on offense, and you can only win, 5 games? What did they win? 6 games?
Yeah.
I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but that's a problem with your defense in my mind. So I'm going to get a pass rusher for them. I'm going to go and get Shane Ray and hope that helps tackle some of their defensive issues.
I'm going to go on the opposite end. I think you only have 2 more years with Drew Brees, and so you got to give him all the protection you can right now. So I think you got to go on offensive lineman, and you got La'el Collins on the board for me still. So I think Collins is going to give him the protection he needs. He doesn't have Jimmy Graham to target, so I think he's going to need some more time to find a new receiver that he really likes.
All right, 14th overall pick in the 2015 NFL Draft. Miami Dolphins are on the clock. More than anything, the Dolphins need a guard. Pouncey has been serviceable, but they need someone opposite him to solidify the line. While La'el Collins could fit into their system as a guard, you can get solid guards in the second round, and Landon Collins is too good a safety to pass up when you need a safety as bad as the Dolphins do. Collins can fit in as either a strong safety or a free safety, though while he develops for the first couple of years, being a strong safety would probably suit him better based on how his skill set is and how he played in college. I think he has some natural instincts that can translate into the NFL and make it easier for him to adjust, and he is a phenomenal tackler. He can cover the long throws, but kind of needs to work on the intermediate and short throws, and I think he can be a good complement playing beside Rashad Jones next year.
All right. Well, I have the Dolphins taking Eric Flowers, the offensive lineman. As I said earlier, I think he's a really solid player, but I think one of the reasons he's flying up so far in people's draft boards to go top 10 is because he's projecting the best at tackle in the long term. And I think Miami could use a guard that can project more onto tackle in the future. I think they need some protection for Tannehill to try to give him a theme in my draft here is trying to give quarterbacks that you're trying to figure out a little bit of help. And I think especially with Tannehill coming up on what would have to be a contract extension, I think it's this year, after this year, you really want to know if he's worth the big money. So I want to give him a little bit of protection and see what he can't do with that. So Eric Flowers. Ryan.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't get my mute thing off. Sorry. What I'd go is you lost Cortland Finnegan, so you got to get a cornerback. You need some help. Yeah, you got that safety. That's cool, but I still got Trey Waynes on my board. So you got to go with him. You got to solidify. When you got Tom Brady in that division, when you got Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker on the same line now, you could say they don't have a quarterback to get thrown to, but it's scary if they ever do find a quarterback that can actually pass them the ball. So with that, I think you need to solidify their cornerback situation. That's what you're seeing. I mean, I think the Jets have 6 cornerbacks right now on their roster, just because it's a huge quarterback offense-driven league, so I think that's where they need to go.
All right. With the 15th overall pick, we have the San Francisco 49ers drafting. The 49ers definitely need wide receivers, and they could use some interior linebackers more than an edge rusher. But I think edge rusher is probably top 5 in their needs still. And with Dupree falling to them, I don't think you can pass up with their need there, so I have them drafting Dupree. He's basically a lean, mean pass rushing machine. He's a typical prototype for where the league is headed. The 49ers are in decline right now, and they will be for the next couple of years. But with newly added Darnell Dockett on the other side of Dupree, who they signed this offseason, I think those two will keep opposing QBs on their toes and make up for defensive deficiencies elsewhere. The rebuild of the 49ers will probably be much shorter with the addition of Dupree.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all, Josh, there. There's no inside linebacker for them to take here that's worth the pick at 15. So I already have Dupree gone, but I have Randy Gregory left, who, similar to Shane Ray, just has relatively minor off-season, the pot stuff or whatever, he got busted. It's stupid, but he's very, very talented pass rusher, and they could really use an edge rusher at this point. I agree, top 5 need for them, and Gregory's a pretty solid guy. He's just dropped because of his off-the-field issues, so I'm going Randy Gregory.
I'm sitting in San Francisco, and I'm realizing Oakland's leaving. They're going back to LA, and I'm gonna be a sole franchise in this city area, this Bay City. I need a Bay City guy I need a guy that can carry the team. Who carries the team but a running back? Todd Gurley. All right, he's going to the San Francisco 49ers. You heard it here, folks. Right now, right here, with your ears. Gurley, 49ers.
All right, so about an hour into the show, we got our top 15 picks in. That'll probably be good for now, so we don't take another hour doing the next 15. I don't know if there's any interesting things on your board. I know one of the things I found out after I did mine was that after I finished my top 32, I actually have La'el Collins not even getting drafted in the first round. So I think that would be a pretty big thing on draft day. It wasn't that he wasn't great. I just had him at the lower end of the offensive linemen that are supposed to get drafted in the first round, and I didn't have other teams that needed someone like La'el. So he ended up falling out of my personal GM mock draft. I don't know if there's anything you guys found interesting in your mock drafts that you did.
Not particularly. I have Todd Gurley, the other big name here, going to Arizona. I have Landon Collins, the safety, who I actually really like. I have him going to Kansas City. Trying to think, there's not really anything else there that's really worthy of discussion here. If you guys want, we could share a screen just to put it up, but I don't really care. That's up to you guys.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah. Well, you are the.
Yeah, hold on.
That, and I figured, Josh, if you wanted to, you could talk about. We got a chance to talk about our Jets and Giants because we didn't have we didn't have as good a year as you. But if you wanted to go ahead and say something about your Patriots pick, you could say so if you wanted. But no big deal otherwise for me.
Yeah, hold on. So here's basically let's see, where's the top 15? So this is the picks that we missed. Yeah, I think we've talked about basically the most exciting ones. Just looking at it, at other people's, Hardy has Irving falling out of the top 15. He has Gurley going before Melvin Gordon, which I actually have Gordon going before Gurley. Other than that, there's not really too many interesting things. I'm seeing like the same repeats over and over again, so none of us really had any bold predictions, so that's good. We're all on the same bandwidth, at least.
Yeah, I think our bold predictions come in the first 5, where I have Mariota going first, and I'd have Winston going 6, and Ryan has the trade between the Jets and the Redskins. So.
Think about that trade for a second, all right? Redskins are sick of RG3. They want a quarterback. They get a third-round pick with it. It's a 1-draft pick trade. It's great.
All right. Yeah, I guess I'll talk about the Patriots pick. So the Patriots are picking 32nd overall, and most likely Belichick is just going to trade down like he usually does. But as myself, as the GM of the New England Patriots, if I was Bill Belichick, I would actually draft, and this is with the assumption he'll still be here, which I believe he will be because he's going out the second round, but Laken Tomlinson. Basically, the Patriots' regular season last year depended on who was starting on the offensive line. They had absolutely no depth. As proof when they played the Ravens in the playoffs, and instead of playing with now I already forgot his name. Anyway, instead of playing with one of the backup guard that we just drafted a couple years ago, we just played with 4 linemen instead because it was better than playing with him. And that was pretty much indicative of how the offensive line depth was. If just one offensive line regular was out of the lineup, they were absolutely horrible, and if they had the starting line all in there, they were Super Bowl caliber. It was night and day. So they really need the depth, and preferably someone who can step in and start from day one at the guard position. Tomlinson is projected just outside of the first round, but I'd reach for him at the end of the first round given how he's performed in the offseason. At the Senior Bowl, he was basically the only lineman that could stop Danny Shelton at one-on-one drills, which is now in basically every scouting report that I read online. People just love the fact that Danny Shelton, who was just destroying every other offensive lineman, couldn't do the same to Tomlinson. So you got to like something like that. He shows up when it's needed. He's strong, has great leverage in his legs, and he's instinctual. And that instinctual is huge for Belichick. Basically, any player he drafts in those sorts of situations is because they have the instincts to play in the NFL. I think he can be a solid starter in the NFL from day one. And not only do I, as a GM, would I pick him, but as a fan, I also would really like the pick based on who was going to be there, and if Belichick decided not to trade up or down. So yeah, that's basically who I have going to the Patriots. I don't know if you guys can do your stuff with the Patriots too.
I don't have anything to say, really. I mean,
I can just tell you how bad your picks are. No.
Yeah. Well, I have Laken Tomlinson already gone. I have La'el Collins already gone, who you still had on the board as well. So I went wide receiver Devin Smith just because we always talk about how Brady could use a deep threat and how good he was offensively that one year when he had Randy Moss. So I looked to try to get a deep threat in Devin Smith. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
As you saw on my draft board, I put trade down. That was about it.
Which is probably what's going to happen. The only problem with Devin Smith is once Bill Belichick drafts him, he's going to be horrible because it's just how it works. It doesn't. They can be like the best. He could draft like Amari Cooper could fall to like 32, and Belichick would draft him, and he'd just end up being a bust because basically any wide receiver that Belichick drafts is going to, well, in the early rounds, is going to be a bust for some God knows why reason.
Was it Chad Jackson?
Yes, Chad Jackson.
I loved him, dude. Florida prodigy.
There was yesterday, so we were at the Butler signing. There was a woman with a Chad Jackson jersey on. I was like, what the hell? That's someone who just goes out there and it's just like, oh yeah, this is like big, white, flashy wide receiver, and then just buys the jersey.
But there was a lot of that. There was a lot of Chad Jackson jerseys.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. I mean, I bought a Maroney jersey, so I can't really say too much.
Yeah, see, I'm very safe with my jersey purchasing. I've had Strahan here for a while. I got Eli the year of the first Super Bowl. I'm actually really proud. I bought my Eli jersey before they won the Super Bowl, but I did buy it that year. So those are my only two owned jerseys. I play it too safe.
As you can see, I play it real safe. I got two Mark Sanchez jerseys, baby. And I got a Joe Namath, which you can't go wrong with, fucking icons. But fuck Sanchez.
Yeah, after the Maroney jersey, I waited like 3 years before I bought a Gronk jersey, just in case. Yeah, so I think that's about it for our NFL draft special. Does anyone else have anything to say about the draft? Anything exciting? Anything you're
looking forward to it. I don't know.
I'm looking forward to the fact that like no big names. Well, I don't know if not many big name draft prospects are actually going to be at the draft, which I thought was interesting. Because this is the first year they're going to be out of New York, and now everyone's like, nah, I don't think I want to go now. It's like, geez, is Chicago that bad?
Well, I think they also built it up so much. So many. They would have like 25 guys, and 10 of them wouldn't even be in the first round. So it's just too much. I mean, I think that moving to Chicago, I wish it stayed in New York, but honestly, it's probably good for the prospects because this is probably a good transition to just say, okay, fuck it, I'm not going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, isn't even like Winston and Mariota aren't even going, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy though. That's crazy because there's no way they fall out of the first round.
I don't know.
So like, was Rodgers? Rodgers was there and fell out of the first round though, right?
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers, he was there, but he was in the first round. He was like 26 or something.
Oh, was he? Oh.
He was low.
So he was just slipping. So they had like all the cameras on him. I'm sure he was like the last guy still still there.
Well, I think he was the first guy who really like had to sweat it out. I think.
Yeah. Alrighty. So that was our draft special. Hope all 5 of you watching. We increased our rating. Usually I say 4. It's now 5. Hope all 5 of you watching liked it. Yeah.
I gave my dad the link now, so it's not just moms. We will probably have one dad.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll probably share some of this on Facebook and on our Twitter page or something. I don't know. Just for fun, now that we actually have something to share. So, yeah. Hope you all enjoyed the show. And have fun watching the draft Thursday. And say goodbye, Ryan.
Bye, Ryan.